topic for discussion is muscle of upper extremity. The muscle of upper extremity can be divided into muscle of shoulder, muscle of arm, muscle of forearm and muscle of hand. The upper extremity start from shoulder and ranges to the finger. The muscle above the elbow and below the shoulder is known as muscle of arm. And the third group of muscle which are ranges from start from the elbow to the wrist joint is known as muscle of forearm, and the other muscle are muscle of your hand. Now I am going to discuss about the muscle of shoulder joint, the muscle which controls the mobility at the shoulder joint. The muscle of shoulder joint are located between the shoulder girdle and the bone of arm, the humerus. Bone of arm is mainly humerus bone. They can be divided into three compartments: the muscle of anterior compartment, the muscle of posterior compartment and muscle of lateral compartment. You can see here the diagram, the muscle of anterior compartment, the muscle which are anteriorly to the thorax. The next is muscle of posterior compartment, the muscle which are situated over the posterior compartment of thorax. And third is muscle of lateral compartment, which is located laterally to the your shoulder joint. So first I would like to discuss about the muscle of anterior compartment. There is one muscle anteriorly which is controlling the shoulder mobility is subscapularis muscle. Now I am going to discuss about the subscapularis muscle in detail. First I will like to mention the origin of subscapularis muscle. The muscle comes from nearly the whole of subscapular fossa. When you see the sternum, all the muscle originate from the scapular fossa of the scapula, and it is inserted over the lesser tubercle of humerus. It means this muscle is connecting scapula to the humerus. So by contraction and relaxation of this muscle, it will have mobility either over scapula or over the humerus. Now come to the innervation. You can see the origin of this muscle. Origin is dotted by red line. Whole the muscle is originated from the subscapular fossa and come to the insertion over the lesser tubercle of humerus. Now come to the innervation. Innervation is the muscle is supplied by branches of subscapular nerve which is having root value from C5 to C8. It means subscapularis is supplied by a nerve known as subscapular nerve, which is originating from root C5 to C8 from the brachial plexus. Now come to the description of this muscle. What is the importance of subscapular muscle in different sports and physical education? The triangular subscapular muscle occupies nearly the whole of the subscapular fossa. Its anterior surface touches the posterior surface of serratus anterior muscle. Its tendon crosses the shoulder joint on the lateral side and provides some of its muscle fiber. Between the articular capsule, the tendon, there is subtendinous bursa scapularis which communicate with the articular cavity of shoulder joint. So whole the subscapularis muscle originate from the subscapular fossa and inserted over the lesser tubercle. So let's discuss the function of this muscle. What is the function of this muscle? The main function of subscapular muscle is internal rotation. You can see in the diagram, this is the shoulder joint. Shoulder joint, this is your shoulder joint. Muscles are originating from subscapular fossa and inserted over the, this is the lesser tubercle. This is the lesser tubercle of your humerus. So whenever there is contraction in the muscle and bringing lesser tubercle inside is known as internal rotation. So subscapular muscle is responsible for production of internal rotation of humerus to the shoulder joint. So in this movement we have seen axial skeleton or scapula is fixed. Scapula is fixed, only your humerus is moving. So when scapula is fixed, humerus will move because of contraction of this muscle it will produce internal rotation. Its antagonists are the supraspinatus and infraspinatus. Supraspinatus, because you can see in the scapula, this muscle mainly originates from inner surface of scapula, inside scapula, and outside scapula. There are two muscles. Supraspinatus originate from here and infraspinatus originate from here. So whenever this will contract, the supraspinatus and infraspinatus should be relaxed. So for any proper movement or smooth and coordinated movement, whenever there is a contraction in agonist muscle, it should produce relaxation of antagonist muscle. So the function of subscapularis muscle is also dependent on the antagonistic action of supra and infraspinatus muscle. The next muscle, the posterior compartment of shoulder muscle. The posterior compartment of shoulder muscle are mainly supraspinatus. You can see here in the diagram, supraspinatus, infraspinatus, teres minor and teres minor, teres major muscle. Supraspinatus, infraspinatus, teres major and teres minor muscle. So the posterior group of shoulder muscle are mainly four muscle. They are namely supraspinatus, infraspinatus, teres minor and teres major. First I would like to discuss about the supraspinatus muscle. Supraspinatus muscle, as we can see here, it originates from the supraspinous dorsal surface of supraspinous area of the scapula, and you can see in the diagram it is going under the scapula to attach over the GT, over the greater tubercle of humerus. So the muscle, you can see in the diagram, the muscle is originating from the supraspinatus area and inserting over the GT. This muscle is having a great importance in most of the shoulder joint pathology, especially shoulder impingement syndrome. Impingement syndrome is most common in most of the athlete, and you can see here, if you see the muscle is originating, see the traveling of muscle. Muscle is originating from the supraspinatus area and coming to the GT, attaching over GT through the canal, and whenever there is any narrowing or any depression of scapula, it can reduce the cavity of canal. So whatever the nerve is going through that canal or artery is going through that canal, because of any inflammation or any swelling in this muscle, can compress the adjacent artery and nerve. All the sports which require shoulder mobility are more prone to have some problem or develop some pathology in this supraspinatus muscle, and because of development of pathology in muscle, the pathology will not be limited only up to muscle, it can compromise the other neural structure or vascular structure. So the sports person can be away from any sport from long time and cause lot of viscous effect, various damaging effect, because if you keep a sport personnel for long time away from the sport, he will develop deconditioning. So this is a small muscle, but the origin or runway or way of origination is very peculiar. It is coming through a canal, see the canal. So whenever there is pathology, it can compress the other neural and vascular structure. Now come to the innervation of supraspinatus muscle. The supraspinatus muscle is supplied by the suprascapular nerve, which comes from the C4 to C6 segment of brachial plexus. Now come to the function of supraspinatus muscle. This muscle usually function together with the deltoid muscle to abduct the arm, deltoid abduction. Most of the sports activities require flexion and abduction of shoulder. So abduction of shoulder is basically performed by the main muscle of abduction is deltoid, but this muscle also plays an important role in shoulder abduction. Its contractions serve as the central alignment of head to the humerus in the middle of glenoid fossa of scapula and facilitate abduction. It stops the articular surface in contact and in this way prevent dislocation of or subluxation of shoulder joint, because we all know shoulder joint is most mobile joint, and because of mobility shoulder is having least amount of stability. Clear? But for all type of sport activity or any type of normal activities, we need mobility as well as balance or stability of shoulder joint, and this is the muscle which is trying to keep the head in the glenoid cavity, and by applying this effort it has two functions. First function, it is helping deltoid to perform abduction, but the main important function of this muscle is it is trying to bring head closer. When you see the anatomy of shoulder joint, glenoid cavity is shallow. Glenoid cavity is shallow in comparison to acetabulum of hip cavity, that deeper, whereas the head is not rounded. So there is no proper congruency. It is only the one of the factor, one of the muscle, that is supraspinatus, which is trying to bring these two things closer and prevent dislocation or subluxation of shoulder joint. The next muscle of posterior shoulder region is infraspinatus muscle. First was supraspinatus, second is infraspinatus muscle. It also originates from the superior surface of spine, scapula. Infra from here. Infraspinatus muscle originates from the inferior dorsal surface of the scapula and inserted into middle facet of greater tubercle of some of the muscle fiber. It is going to insert over the also, along with supraspinatus, infraspinatus is also inserted over the greater tubercle of humerus. Now come to innervation of this muscle. The muscle is innervated by suprascapular nerve, and the root value of this nerve is C4 to C6 segment of brachial plexus. Now come to the function of this muscle. The infraspinatus muscle acts as external rotator or lateral rotator of arm. As we have seen, our supraspinatus muscle has two functions: abduction and fixation of head to the glenoid cavity, whereas infraspinatus muscle is working as a external rotator. External rotation means your head is going away from your glenoid cavity. So for all activities like throwing, like bowling, you need your head should go away, because when you will have your head will go away, it will have more freedom. So because of having more freedom, it will have more mobility, and when it will have more mobility, you will have more velocity. Clear? So to perform all fast, like fast bowling, like javelin throw, like discus throw, like any throwing activities, you need to perform that activity in full abduction and external rotation. Clear? So for full abduction and external rotation, you should have a proper strength of these muscles. So we have seen our supraspinatus is acting as a helper for abduction as well as fixing the humerus with glenoid cavity. But here infraspinatus muscle is acting as a external rotator. It means it can produce external rotation at the shoulder joint. It stops the articular surface of shoulder joint in contact and prevent dislocation of shoulder. As you can see here, whenever it will contract, it will cause external rotation. External rotation means because it is attached with the GT. You can see the diagram. This is a shoulder joint, and this is a lesser trochanter, and this is a GT. This is a greater trochanter. This is a greater trochanter. So normal position of shoulder joint. Normal, whenever it will contract, it will bring head. It will bring, whenever it contract, it will bring head out. First thing. Second thing, it can, because it is having higher amount of muscle fiber, muscle mass. So by absorbing all the load, on itself, it can prevent the shoulder dislocation. Clear? If I am pulling you, but I am having enough strength, so I can control you. Even I am trying to pull you out, but I am having strong enough strength to control you. Same as here, This muscle is trying to bring shoulder head out from the cavity. So whenever your head will come out, it is unstabilized, it is less stable. But because of the strength of this muscle is helping to prevent dislocation of shoulder. Now come to the next muscle, teres minor. Next muscle of posterior compartment of shoulder is teres minor. The teres minor muscle arises from the lateral border of scapula, as you can see in the diagram, and inserted over the greater tubercle of humerus. After some muscle fiber are inserted into the articular capsule of shoulder joint. So it has double insertion. You can see some fibers are inserted, mostly fibers are inserted over the greater tubercle of humerus, and some are going in the joint capsule. Now come to the innervation. Innervation of teres minor. The teres minor muscle is supplied by axillary nerve. Axillary nerve is also a branch of brachial plexus, which comes from the C5 to C8 segment of brachial plexus. Now come to the function of teres minor muscle. Its function are similar to function of the infraspinatus, as we have seen. Infraspinatus is responsible for external rotation of humeral head. So it also helps infraspinatus to externally rotate the humeral head from gland cavity, and it stabilizes the head of humerus in glenoid fossa of the scapula. Being a muscle, it is trying to bring head of shoulder out from the cavity, but even it is giving the dynamic stability to the head of humerus in gland cavity. So all these muscles are also known as dynamic stabilizer of shoulder joint. I have discussed about supraspinatus, infraspinatus, teres minor, and fourth one is teres major muscle. The teres major muscle arises from the lateral border of near the inferior angle of scapula. This is the inferior angle and this is the superior angle. Inferior angle of scapula and teres major originate from here. So the teres major, where you can see in the diagram, origin is near the inferior angle of the scapula. And now come to the insertion. The teres major muscle is inserted by a way flattened tendon into the crest of lesser tubercle of humerus. So we have seen all the anterior and posterior shoulder muscle are either inserted over the greater tubercle or tubercle. So we have seen subscapularis and teres major both are inserted over the lesser tubercle, whereas teres minor, supraspinatus, infraspinatus both are inserted over the greater tubercle. So by having contraction, they can move the head either in internal direction or external. The muscle which are attached over the lesser tubercle, they will produce internal rotation, and the muscle which are attached over the greater tubercle, they will produce external rotation. Now come to the innervation. The muscle, teres major muscle, is supplied by C6 to C7 segment of brachial plexus, and which is supplied by thoracodorsal nerve. So thoracodorsal nerve supplied teres major muscle, and the root value of thoracodorsal nerve is C6 to C7. Now come to the function of teres major muscle. It performs retroversion and internal. Retroversion means your arm is going back, and head is coming inside. So both subscapularis and teres major are responsible for internal rotation, whereas supraspinatus is responsible for abduction, and we have seen infraspinatus and teres minor are responsible for external rotation. So we have seen all these muscles, they are mainly controlling the mobility of shoulder joint. Along with controlling the mobility of shoulder joint, they are giving the dynamic stability. And as we all know, shoulder joint is the least stable joint because of having high amount of flexibility, but most of the sports require maximum strength as well as stability by shoulder joint to perform in maximum to maximum sports and athletic activity. So by having normal anatomy and physiology of this muscle, normal biomechanics of this muscle, by having a good knowledge of their origin, insertion, we can serve and we can train our athlete in a better manner So they can perform their best in the competition. So we have finished the shoulder muscle of posterior compartment. Now I would like to discuss the most important third compartment of muscle, that is lateral. We have finished the anterior compartment of shoulder muscle, we have finished the posterior compartment of shoulder muscle, and now I am going to discuss the lateral compartment of shoulder muscle, that is basically deltoid muscle, the most bulky muscle, most bulky origin, we can see in the diagram, but having a narrower insertion. So let us discuss something about the origin, insertion and function of deltoid muscle. The deltoid muscle arises from the lateral 1/3 of anterior border of clavicle, lateral 1/3 of anterior border of clavicle. Lateral 1/3 mean this is the clavicle, lateral 1/3, lateral is lateral, this is lateral 1/3. If you divide clavicle in three portion, one portion, two portion, three portion, so this is medial portion, medial border of clavicle, this is the lateral border. So your deltoid muscle originate from lateral 1/3 of anterior border of clavicle, the clavicular part from the lateral border of acromion part. There are two parts, some originate from the clavicle and some fiber originate from the acromion process. So deltoid muscle has two origins. I can show you in the diagram. You can see here it has two origin, one over clavicle and other over the, you can see by the red diagram, one over the clavicle and other over the acromion process. So it means that some fibers are originated from the clavicle bone and some fibers are originated from the acromion process of scapula. Now come to insertion. You can see in the diagram, it is inserted into the deltoid tuberosity of humerus. There is a deltoid tuberosity. You can see in your arm there is a groove. If you feel the bulky muscle, when you come down, you will find a groove in the shaft of humerus. This is known as radial groove. So both the origin, both the end, either clavicular head or acromial head, is going to insert over the radial tuberosity of humerus. Now come to the innervation of deltoid muscle. The muscle is supplied by axillary nerve which comes from C6 and C5 and C6. Axillary nerve which is having root value of C5 and C6 of brachial plexus. This means deltoid muscle is supplied by axillary nerve, and most of the like baseball or any event where you need to, like basketball when you want to snatch ball from the other athlete, sometime you are not able to hold the ball, catch the ball, and you are pulling his arm, and by force pulling of his arm can shoulder, and sometime because of shoulder dislocation or when you are throwing and you have weaker muscle, or you are going for any sports or athletic event in which maximum force production by shoulder joint is required, and if your shoulder joint is not able to produce that force and you are using that in wrong manner, it can dislocate. So most of the time shoulder dislocation or forceful pulling of shoulder joint can cause axillary nerve injury, and whenever you will have axillary nerve injury, you will not be able to contract your deltoid. And now come to the main function of deltoid muscle. Deltoid muscle, let us discuss something about some specific feature of deltoid muscle. Deltoid muscle is the most powerful of all the shoulder muscle. This is the deltoid muscle. You can see in the bulk, very looking like a sumo wrestler. It is the most bulky muscle of shoulder joint. It received its name from triangular shape. Delta is triangle. Delta is a triangle. So the name of deltoid comes from triangular shape. It is located closely under the skin and can be easily recognized during clinical observation. We can palpate, because it is most superficial muscle. By simple palpation we can palpate the deltoid muscle. Now come to the function of deltoid muscle. It is the most important abductor of arm and can abduct the arm about 90 degree. So 90 degree abduction, from 0 to 90 degree abduction of arm is the function of deltoid muscle, and this is the deltoid muscle has three fibers. You can see in the diagram, one fiber, two fiber and three fiber. It means anterior fiber, middle fiber and posterior fiber. So different fiber are responsible for different types of movement, like shoulder flexion. In shoulder flexion, your anterior fiber of deltoid is playing some role in shoulder flexion. When you are going for deltoid full shoulder abduction, the main function of shoulder abduction is by your middle fiber of deltoid, and when you are going for shoulder extension, it is the function of posterior fiber of deltoid. So the main function, let us discuss, the main function of deltoid muscle is shoulder abduction about 90 degree. After that, deltoid is not able to abduct shoulder. Why? Because when shoulder come in 90 degree, what happen? When shoulder come, further abduction from this angle is hindered by the close approximation of, suppose you can see by the diagram, this is your shoulder joint. When your shoulder is coming up in 90 degree, what happen? This GT is going to approximate with glenoid cavity, so it can hinder the movement. So at this level your deltoid will be insufficient, it will not be able to pull, because if there is bony approximation, whatever force is applied by muscle will not be able to. And second thing, the angle of pull, we have discussed in the angle of pull, muscle can apply maximal force when the angle of pull is 90, but when the shoulder comes at 90 degree of abduction, the muscle will not be able to produce more force or produce force because of the angle of pull is 180 or 0. So at angle of pull at 0 or 180, muscle cannot produce torque. So at this angle, at 90 degree angle, muscle, deltoid muscle cannot produce further abduction because of two things. First thing, because of approximation of GT with glenoid cavity, and second thing, because of changing in angle pull is more than 90, so it will not be able to produce torque. So but still we can go for more ranges. How this more range is possible without the activity or insufficiency of deltoid muscle? We will discuss this. Whenever further movement of arm in this direction becomes elevation of arm and is achieved by continuing movement of other muscle, mainly trapezius and serratus anterior. We have discussed in the both muscle, they are responsible for elevating the scapula. So you see here, when scapula is fixed, whenever your scapula is fixed, it can cause approximation of one bone to other bone, and there is a fixed barrier, hard barrier, anatomical barrier, so there is no further movement. But after that, the contraction of serratus anterior as well as trapezius start, and they can cause elevation of shoulder, elevation of, see here, this is locked, no movement, but because of function of serratus anterior and trapezius, it can cause elevation of scapula. So we will have more range to move the head within the cavity. So further movement of arm in the direction become elevation of arm is achieved by continuing movement of other muscle, mainly trapezius and muscle and the serratus anterior muscle. The muscle draws the scapula with the glenoid cavity superiorly through simultaneous movement of the sternoclavicular joint. As I have told you, whenever there is mobility at 90 degree, there is approximation, but the other muscle, serratus anterior and trapezius, they draw the scapula superiorly, and because of superior displacement of scapula, they will provide more space to head of humerus to go down and produce or achieve more ranges. The various origin of muscle can work individually. As we have seen, the deltoid muscle has two origin, one from acromion process of scapula and other from lateral 1/3 of anterior surface of clavicle, but both origin are inserted at one point in the radial groove of humerus and both work together. The clavicular part provide anteversion and internal rotation, whereas the spinal part provide retroversion and external rotation. So when both origin work together in the deltoid muscle, When both origins work together, they can produce movement of shoulder abduction till 90 degree. But when both ends work separately, so then both end, the clavicular end of deltoid work separately, they will produce anteversion and retroversion of scapula. Anteversion mean coming towards mid side and internal rotation of scapula, whereas spinal, when your acromion part of deltoid will cause contraction, it can cause external rotation and retroversion. Anteversion mean coming scapula toward mid side, retroversion mean away from side. So it is based on the contraction of fibrous type. When your clavicular origin will contract, because of contraction of clavicular origin, it will cause anteversion and internal rotation, and because of contraction of spinous fibers of scapula of deltoid, it will cause external rotation and retroversion. This is all about the shoulder muscle. Now come to the muscle of arm. Muscle of arm. Arm, as I told you, arm is a area above elbow and below shoulder. The area above elbow and below shoulder is known as arm. The muscle of arm can be divided into anterior compartment of arm and posterior compartment of arm. The anterior compartment of arm muscle is known as flexor compartment of arm, and the posterior compartment is also known as extensor compartment of arm. Okay, so we are discussing the posterior compartment of arm muscle, that is first muscle is triceps brachii muscle. Now I am going to discuss about the origin of triceps brachii muscle. The triceps brachii muscle originates from different heads, different locations, the long head and short head. The long head originates from the scapula. It mainly originates from the infraglenoid tubercle of scapula. It is here, you can see in the bone. The long head of triceps originates from the infraglenoid tubercle of the scapula, and the short head has the second is lateral head. Lateral head arises from the proximal end of radial groove. Proximal end of radial groove. You can see this is a radial groove, and your lateral head originates from the here, from the humerus. And third is the medial head or deep head, arises from the same surface on the humerus but distally on the radial groove. One, suppose if it is a radial groove, lateral head originates from the proximal, medial head from the distal. So triceps muscle, triceps, tri mean three, ceps mean origin. Triceps muscle has three origin, one from the scapula, from infraglenoid tubercle, and two heads, one lateral, one medial. Lateral head from the proximal radial groove and medial head from the distal radial groove. Now come to the insertion of triceps. All three heads, either long head, lateral head or medial head, all three heads are collectively inserted distally into the olecranon of ulna. There is a ulna, the bone of forearm, it is inserted over the olecranon process of ulna. Now come to the function, innervation of triceps muscle. As we know, triceps muscle is the posterior muscle of arm. Posterior muscle of arm. So this muscle, mainly triceps brachii, is supplied by the radial nerve. It is the most important. We have three nerves in upper arm: radial, ulnar, and medial. And radial nerve is one of the important muscle of forearm. And our biceps muscle, triceps muscle, is supplied by the radial nerve, which is having root value of C6 to C8 segment of brachial plexus. Now come to the some important description about the triceps muscle. It is the thick fleshy muscle with three heads. We have seen long head, lateral head and medial head. A long head, lateral head and medial head, which is biggest of the three heads and fused distally. We have seen long head is the biggest. Long head comes from scapula and come down, whereas the other head comes from humerus. So long head is the biggest. This tendon can radiate out several fibrous bands to fascia of the forearm when it crosses over the anconeus muscle. Anconeus muscle is the other muscle of posterior compartment of arm, but triceps is long muscle. Triceps is long muscle, whereas anconeus is shorter muscle. So anconeus muscle is fully covered by the triceps muscle. Now come to the function of triceps muscle. It is a powerful extensor of elbow joint. As we have seen, it originates from the posterior compartment of arm as well as scapula and inserted over the olecranon process of ulna. Whenever it will contract, it will cause contraction of our elbow. But never get confused whenever we are doing contraction in this manner. Suppose if we are going gym to strengthen our triceps, mainly in the gyms, ever it is athlete or a bodybuilder, they are working for building their biceps and triceps. So to build biceps, when you are doing, suppose this is elbow flexion. Elbow flexion is the concentric contraction of biceps. Even elbow extension is not a function of triceps. When you are performing any resistive movement or weight movement in this position, this is the eccentric contraction of biceps also. Okay. So if you want to strengthen your triceps, you should elevate your arm and try to extend your elbow overhead position. So you will use your triceps muscle. So the main function of triceps muscle is extension, powerful extension at elbow joint. The articularis cubitae muscle prevent the articular surface from being too close to each other during extension. Now come to the second muscle of posterior compartment of arm is anconeus muscle. It is a smaller muscle. It is also a posterior muscle, plays an important role in elbow movement. Anconeus muscle arises from the posterior surface of lateral epicondyle. You can see here, it originates from the posterior surface of, you can see in the diagram, posterior surface of lateral epicondyle of humerus and crosses the elbow joint and inserted over the triceps brachii. It means it is having origin from humerus and insertion over the olecranon or the ulna. It means it has same insertion along with triceps. So whenever it will contract, it will cause extension movement. Now come to the innervation of anconeus muscle. The anconeus muscle is supplied by the radial nerve from C7 and C8 segment of brachial plexus. So anconeus muscle is also supplied by radial nerve. We have seen both posterior compartment muscle of arm is supplied by radial nerve. And there is a very most common injury whenever you will have injection. If you go to a doctor, and in India there are a number of doctors, they are quacks. They don't know the anatomy of body, they don't know physiology, and they used to apply injection. Sometimes they can inject injection in the radial groove. Normally you should apply injection over the deltoid bone muscle, but sometimes the person is lean and thin, they cannot palpate deltoid and put injection in the radial groove. And whenever you will apply injection in radial groove, it can cause radial nerve injury. And whenever there will be radial nerve injury, it can cause paralysis of all those muscles which is supplied by radial nerve. So what happens? Patient will not be able to extend his elbow because of loss of radial nerve. So patient will have this type of problem because all your wrist extension as well as your elbow extension is maintained by radial nerve or the muscle which are innervated by radial nerve. So radial nerve is an important muscle. If it gets affected, or sometimes you have fracture in sports, like fracture, you got fracture, shaft of femur, and radial nerve is running across the bone, fracture and can cut the nerve. And whenever the nerve will cut, it can paralyze the muscle. So we can lose the movement itself by nerve injury. So now come to the function of anconeus muscle. As we have seen, anconeus muscle is inserted over the ulna along with deltoid muscle, along with triceps muscle. So it has same function of triceps. It also produces extension movement at the elbow joint. Now come to the muscle of anterior compartment of arm. We have discussed the muscle of posterior compartment of the arm, that is mainly extensor group of muscle. Now we are going to discuss about the muscle of the anterior compartment of arm. They are also known as flexor group muscle, and we can divide the anterior muscle of arm in two groups. One is muscle of superficial layer as well as muscle of deep layer. First, I would like to discuss about the muscle of superficial layer. The superficial layer of anterior compartment or flexor compartment muscle consists of one muscle is known as biceps brachii muscle. You can see in the diagram, this is the biceps brachii muscle. It has also two origin. You can see biceps brachii, it has two origin. See here, one is coming from here. Biceps brachii, I will show you in the origin. The biceps brachii muscle has two origins, a short lateral head and long medial head. Short lateral head, this is lateral and long. You can see here the short lateral head is originating from the humerus, whereas short lateral head and long medial head. The short lateral head, the long medial head originate from the supraglenoid tubercle. Supraglenoid tubercle, we have seen as triceps is originating from here, from down the glenoid, but long head of biceps is originating from the supraglenoid tubercle. So the long head of biceps is originated from the supraglenoid tubercle. Its tendon passing through the articular capsule of shoulder joint and runs between the fibrous membrane and the synovial membrane. It then leaves the articular capsule and run along the intertubercular sulcus and biceps groove. The short head, which is flatter, arises from the coracoid process of scapula. Coracoid process, this is the coracoid process of scapula, and this is the supraglenoid tubercle. So biceps muscle originate from both, one from, this is known as short head, this is known as long head. The short head, which is flatter, arises from the tip of coracoid process of scapula. Both of the head then fuses in the middle of the arm and form a single muscular belly. As you can see in the diagram, one head is originating from the tip of coracoid process and other is originating from the supraglenoid tubercle, and they run parallel, and in the middle, in the shaft of humerus, they are fusing together and form a one muscle belly. Now come to the insertion. The biceps brachii muscle is inserted through a round tendon in a radial tuberosity of the radius. They all are coming from one bone, scapula. They all are originating from scapula and inserting over the radial tuberosity. It means biceps muscle is a two joint muscle. They are crossing shoulder joint as well as they are crossing elbow joint. So contraction of this muscle or relaxation of this muscle can produce movement at both joints. So now come to the innervation of biceps brachii. The biceps brachii muscle is supplied by the musculocutaneous nerve, and the root value of this nerve is C5 to C7 segment of brachial plexus. Now come to the function of biceps brachii. The biceps brachii muscle flexes the forearm to the arm. Flexion of elbow is the main function of biceps brachii. It supinates the forearm and hand. Supinate the forearm because your muscle is coming from scapula and inserting over the radial tuberosity. Whenever it will contract, it will cause supination of arm as well as flexion of arm. So biceps brachii has two functions. The main function is flexion of elbow and the second function is supination of forearm. So it is helping supinator muscle. If the fixed point of biceps muscle is reversed and the rest of radius, then a traction occurs over the shoulder as if the shoulder would be from away. So the main function of biceps, main function is flexion of elbow, and the accessory function is supination of forearm.
In this session, we will be discussing about the muscles and movements around the shoulder joint. Before we starting the exact shoulder joint itself, we will go through the different bones in the around the shoulder joint. The first one is scapula. It is one of the flat bone in the body, and the different parts of the scapula include the glenoid fossa, infraspinatus fossa, in supraspinatus fossa is there, subscapular fossa is there, spine of the scapula is there, coracoid process is there, acromion process is there. The second bone is the clavicle, and next is the humerus. It is having a head, and there is greater tubercle is there, lesser tubercle is there. In between these tubercle, there is an intertubercular groove is there, and there is a deltoid tuberosity. There are three main joints available in the shoulder girdle. These are glenohumeral joint, acromioclavicular joint, and sternoclavicular joint. We will go through the sternoclavicular joint. It is formed by sternal end of the clavicle and clavicular notch of the manubrium sternum. And there is an articular capsule is there, and there are ligaments which support the structure. These are the anterior sternoclavicular ligament, posterior sternoclavicular ligament, interclavicular ligament, and costoclavicular ligament. The movements available are very limited range of motion is available in this joint. This articulation admits of a limited amount of motions. These are upward, forward, backward, and downward motions. These are very limited amount of motions are available. Then second type of joint in the shoulder girdle is the acromioclavicular joint. That is, it is the joint between the scapula and the clavicle. There are 3 degrees of freedom. It is again plain synovial joint with 3 degrees of freedom. It is having a joint capsule and 3 major ligaments. The main function of this joint is that it maintains the relationship between the clavicle and the scapula in early stages of elevation of the upper limb, and allow the scapula an additional range of rotation of the thorax in the later stages of elevation of the upper limb. Then articular surface of this joint, the lateral end of the clavicle and facet of the acromion of the scapula, these are the articular surfaces. Then the movements available in the scapula. We will go through the different movements available in the scapula. The first one is scapular retraction. In this case, the scapula is moved posteriorly and medially along the back, that is moving the arm and shoulder posteriorly. That is, the scapula is moved posteriorly and medially along the back, moving arm and shoulder joint posteriorly. That is retraction of the scapula, retracting the both scapula. It gives the sensation of a squeezing the scapula together, squeezing the shoulder blades together. The muscles for the retraction are the rhomboides major, rhomboides minor, and trapezius. Next type of movement available in scapula is scapular protraction. That is, scapula is moved anteriorly. Scapular protraction means the movement of the scapula anteriorly and laterally along the back. That is, arms and shoulder joint moves anteriorly. That is, in this case, the scapula moves anteriorly. In that, if the both scapula protracts, we will get the effect of the pectoralis major muscle squeezed together. The muscles involved are the serratus anterior, these are the prime movers, then pectoralis minor and major. Next type of movement is the scapular elevation. That is, it is the shrugging motion. The scapula is raised in a shrugging motion. The muscles involved are the levator scapula, upper fibers of trapezius. Next type of motion available in the scapula is the scapular depression. The scapula is lowered from elevated position. The scapula may be depressed so that the angle formed by the neck and shoulder become obtuse, that is giving the appearance of a slumped shoulder. The muscles acting are pectoralis minor, lower fibers of trapezius, subclavius, and latissimus dorsi. Then the joint capsule and ligaments. It is having a weak joint capsule. So, the joint is supported by ligaments, because these are the two structures which give stability to the joint, It is joint capsule and ligaments, and here the joint capsule is we have a weak joint capsule. So, but the ligaments are strong. The ligaments are superior and inferior acromioclavicular ligament and coracoclavicular ligament. Coracoclavicular ligament is having a lateral and medial portion. The lateral portion is called trapezoid ligament and the medial portion is called conoid ligament. Then the next joint available at the shoulder girdle is the glenohumeral joint. Glenohumeral joint is a ball and socket joint, synovial type ball and socket type of joint. It is having 3 degrees of freedom. That means that it can move in 3 different planes. That the movements available in the joint is flexion, extension, rotation, that is medial and lateral rotation, abduction and adduction, and a combination of movement called circumduction is also available at this joint. Like any other joint, it is having a joint capsule and associated ligaments and bursa. The capsule and ligaments are the structures which give stability to the joint. The joint is formed by the head of the humerus. It articulates with the glenoid fossa. Now, this joint is having both stability and mobility function, but here like any other joint it is having stability and mobility function, but these are 2 reverse functions. In the case of glenohumeral joint, the mobility function is more, so it compromises the stability functions. So, we can say the glenohumeral joint is a joint the shoulder joint is a joint which is highly susceptible to injury. Now, the articular surface. The articular surface is formed by the head of the humerus and the glenoid fossa of the scapula. Now, it is having a proximal and distal articular surfaces. The proximal articular surface is formed by the glenoid fossa of the scapula. That is the orientation of the fossa, it varies, the orientation varies according to the position, the resting position on of the scapula on the thorax. Now, the distal articular surface is formed by the humeral head. Now, once we go through the articular surface, the difference in the size of the articular surface, the humeral head is larger than that of the glenoid fossa, and the head faces medially, superiorly and posteriorly with regards to the shaft of the humerus. Now, the angle of inclination. Angle of inclination means the angle formed by the humeral head, the axis of the humeral head and axis of the shaft. That is humeral head, the axis formed by the shaft and the axis, and if we are drawing a line that is through the shaft of the humerus and another line through the head and neck of the humerus, the angle formed between these 2 lines is known as angle of inclination, and is around the medial side, it is around 130 to 150 degrees, the normal angle of inclination. Now, angle of torsion. Angle of torsion means it is the axis formed by the upper side and lower side of the humerus. That is the axis of the the angle formed between the axis of the humeral head and neck with the condyles of the humerus. It is around 30 degree. Now, regarding the stability of the glenohumeral joint, like any other joint, the stability depends upon, the first one is the ligament itself. Then there is a glenoid labrum which helps to deepen the glenoid fossa. There is a musculo-tendinous cuff or rotator cuff which consists of 4 muscles around the shoulder, and there is a coracoacromial arch. These are the 3 important structures which improve the stability of the glenohumeral joint. We will go through each structures now. The first one is the glenoid labrum. It is a dense fibrous tissue which surrounds and attaches the periphery of the glenoid fossa. That it deepens the glenoid fossa, it enhances the depth and curvature of the fossa. Then superiorly, the glenoid labrum is loosely attached. Inferiorly, it is firmly attached and relatively immobile. And it serves as attachment site for glenohumeral ligament and long head of the biceps brachii. The second structure which gives support or stability to the joint is the joint capsule. It's having a large loose capsule superiorly and it slacks anteriorly and inferiorly and is reinforced by different ligaments. The capsule is reinforced by superior, inferior and middle glenohumeral ligament and coracohumeral ligament. So, there are four ligaments which reinforces the capsule, that is superior, inferior and middle glenohumeral ligament and coracohumeral ligament, and subscapularis muscle also reinforces the capsule anteriorly. Now, there is a thin area of capsule between superior and medial glenohumeral ligament. It is the weakest point of the capsule. This weakest point is known as foramen of wheat brush, and this is the common site of extrusion of the humeral head in case of anterior dislocation of the humerus. Now, ligament and stability of the joint, and the ligaments are the one important structure which gives the stability of the glenohumeral joint. That is the first ligament is the superior glenohumeral ligament. It contributes to the anterior and inferior stability by limiting the anterior and inferior translation of the humeral head when arm is in 0-degree abduction. That is anterior and inferior stability by limiting the anterior and inferior translation. Once the superior glenohumeral ligament acts once the arm is in 0-degree abduction. Next ligament is the middle glenohumeral ligament. This ligament acts at the up to 45 degree of abduction. That is, it contributes the anterior stability by limiting the anterior humeral translation up to 45 degree of abduction. Above 45 degree, the inferior glenohumeral ligament plays. That is, above 45 degree of abduction and rotation, the inferior glenohumeral joint, inferior glenohumeral ligament plays a major role. Next ligament is the coracohumeral ligament. Its main function is limit the inferior translation of the humeral head. Next is coracoacromial arch. It is formed by acromion process, coracoid process and coracoacromial ligament. It is an osteoligamentous vault formed by coracoid process, acromion process and coracoacromial arch, and this osteoligamentous vault covers the humeral head and forms a space in which subacromial bursa, rotator cuff tendon and portion of the tendon of the long head of the biceps. So, these structures like rotator cuff tendon, subacromial bursa and long head of the biceps are seen between the humeral head or glenoid fossa and the coracoacromial arch. Then the main function of this coracoacromial arch is protect the structure beneath it. That is, the coracoacromial arch protect the structure beneath it from direct trauma. That is, once we are carrying a bag, once over the shoulder, it protect the structures, and next one is it prevent the superior, that is, it prevent the dislocation of the humerus superiorly. Now, there are some cases where when the tendon of the rotator cuff muscle become irritated and inflamed between these structures as they passes through this subacromion space. That is, this causes pain, weakness and loss of movements of the shoulder. So, the rotator cuff muscle and tendon passes through the narrow space between the acromion process of the scapula and head of the humerus, and anything which causes further narrowing of the space can result in impingement syndrome. Now, the bursas. There are two bursas commonly seen. These are subacromion bursa and subdeltoid bursa. It separates the supraspinous tendon and the head of the humerus from acromion, coracoid process and coracoacromial ligament and deltoid muscle. Now, this subacromion bursa permit the smooth gliding between the humerus and supraspinous tendon and surrounding structures. Next structure which gives support to the joint is the rotator cuff muscles. These are a group of muscle which stabilizes a group of muscle and tendon which act as stabilization of the shoulder. These muscles, these are the individual muscle combine at the shoulder and form the cuff around the shoulder. It holds the humerus at different moments of the joint. It holds the humerus at the glenoid fossa. Now, the muscles are supraspinatus, infraspinatus, teres minor and subscapularis. All these muscles arise from the scapula and inserted to the head of the humerus. We will go through the original insertion of each muscles. The first one is supraspinatus. Origin is from the supraspinous fossa and insertion superior and medial facet of the greater tuberosity. Action is stabilize the head of the humerus in the glenohumeral joint and abduction of the arm. Nerve supply is suprascapular nerve. Next is the infraspinatus muscle. Its origin is from the infraspinous fossa and insertion is middle facet of the greater tuberosity. Action is stabilization of the humerus at the joint at different movement, and along with that it externally rotates the arm. Nerve supply is suprascapular nerve. Next muscle is the teres minor muscle. Its origin is from the lateral border of the scapula and inserted in the inferior facet of the greater tuberosity. And action is again the stabilization of the humerus at different movements of the glenohumeral joint, and along with that it externally rotates the arm. Nerve supply is axillary nerve. Next muscle in the rotator cuff group is the subscapularis. Its origin is from the subscapular fossa and inserted into the lesser tuberosity. Its action is stabilization of the head of the humerus in the glenohumeral joint, and one more action is there, that is internal rotation of the humerus, and nerve supply is upper and lower subscapular nerve. We will go through the different movements of the shoulder joint now. Glenohumeral joint. Glenohumeral joint is a joint is having 3 degrees of freedom. The available motions are, that means that it can move at 3 different planes. The available motions are the flexion, extension, abduction, adduction, external and internal rotation. The first one is flexion. In case of flexion, that is arm moves forward and medially. Arm moves forward and medially. It takes place in a plane parallel to the glenoid cavity. The muscles acting are the clavicular head of the pectoralis major, anterior fibers of the deltoid. So, in flexion the arms move forward and medially, and extension at the same time in extension arm moves backward and laterally. The movement again take place in a plane parallel to the surface of the glenoid cavity. The muscle acting are the posterior fibers of the deltoid and latissimus dorsi. Then adduction. Adduction takes place at right angles to the plane of the flexion and extension. The muscles are pectoralis major, latissimus dorsi, short head of the biceps and long head of the triceps. Next movement is the abduction. Abduction, the muscles acting are supraspinatus, deltoid, serratus anterior, upper and lower fibers of the trapezius. Next movement available is the medial rotation. The muscles acting are pectoralis major, anterior fibers of the deltoid, latissimus dorsi and teres major. Lateral rotation, muscles acting are posterior fibers of the deltoid, infraspinatus and teres minor. Another important muscle in this region, the shoulder girdle, is the deltoid muscle. It originates from the anterior border of the lateral 1/3 of the clavicle, lateral border of the acromion, and lower lip of the crest of the spine of the scapula, and it is inserted into the deltoid tuberosity of the humerus. And nerve supply is axillary nerve. Its action is, it's having that is acromion fibers. These are the powerful abductors of the shoulder. Then it's having anterior fibers. These are the flexors and medial rotators. It's having posterior fibers. These are the extensors and lateral rotators of the shoulder. So in this session, we have gone through the different joints in the shoulder girdle. We have gone through the different movements of the scapula, and regarding glenohumeral joint, the articular surface of the glenohumeral joint, and the structures which contribute the stability of the glenohumeral joint, and different movements around the glenohumeral joint.